Tonight, the United Kingdom is not merely divided, it is ablaze. In my 25 years reporting from the front lines of fractured nations, I have rarely witnessed a collapse of civil order as rapid and terrifying as the scenes currently unfolding across Northern Ireland. What began as a march for answers has metastasized into Britain's largest civil disturbance in over a decade, leaving the streets of Belfast, Ballymena, and Derry looking less like parts of the G7 and more like a war zone. The statistics pouring into the newsroom are nothing short of catastrophic. As of this moment, 100,000 protesters have flooded the streets, overwhelming police cordons in a display of raw, unfiltered fury. The target, the very fabric of the government's asylum policy. In a coordinated wave of destruction, 37 hotels, requisitioned by the Home Office to house migrants, have been torched or severely damaged. The High Street Hotel in Belfast, known to shelter 230 asylum seekers, is currently engulfed in orange heat, the riot shields of the Police Service of Northern Ireland, PSNI, glistening uselessly against the glow of the inferno. The irony of the date is lost on no one. It is the 5th of November, bonfire night, but tonight, it is not effigies of Guy Fawkes burning, it is the reputation of the British state. For 3 consecutive nights, the Union Jack has not flown in pride, but has glowed in flames. The air in Belfast is thick with the acrid smell of burning plastic and the deafening roar of a populace that has snapped. Local fire brigades are reporting 19 separate arson attacks in just 24 hours, a logistical nightmare that has stretched emergency services to their breaking point. You promised security. A man was filmed screaming through the smoke at a retreating police line, his voice cracking with emotion. You gave us silence. This is the sentiment tearing through the crowd. This is not organized crime. This is organized rage. With 114 confirmed injuries and police sirens bleeding through the relentless rain, the message from the streets is clear. The social contract has been incinerated along with the hotel lobbies. To dismiss this insurrection as mere far-right thuggery is to commit a grave analytical error. It is a lazy diagnosis from a Westminster bubble that has long since lost touch with the pulse of the nation. What we are witnessing is the violent culmination of economic exhaustion. The spark may have been migration, but the fuel is a profound sense of betrayal. At the edge of the tear gas in Belfast, a young nurse named Sophie McAllister captured the mood of a generation in a live stream that has already racked up 3.2 million views. Holding her phone with trembling hands, she didn't shout slogans. She spoke the cold, hard truth of modern Britain. My rent went up 41% this year, she told the camera, and they tell me there's no funding left. But there's funding for this. She points to the blaze behind her, a visual receipt of government spending priorities. In Lisburn, the King's Crown Hotel, now little more than a skeletal ruin of ash and timber, had been hosting 112 migrants. The cost, funded by the Home Office at a staggering rate of £189 per head, per night. That single contract was worth £7.8 million a year to the operators. To the pensioner freezing in a terraced house in Antrim, or the nurse relying on food banks, seeing millions poured into compassion built on contracts, while public services crumble is not policy, it is an insult. This sentiment was echoed hauntingly by Thomas Reid, an elderly veteran draped in a Union Jack, walking past the debris in Lisburn. I fought for this country, he told reporters, his voice heavy with resignation, but I don't recognize it anymore. When a man who served the crown feels like a stranger in his own land, the state's legitimacy dissolves. Commentators are calling this the moment Britain saw its own reflection, and it is ugly. Viewers across the UK are scrolling through their feeds in silence, not because they support the arson, but because they recognize the anger. The numbers, £7.8 million for one hotel, versus the silence offered to struggling families, are more than statistics. They are a diagnosis of a government that has prioritized the optics of international obligation over the survival of its own people. While the skies over Ulster turned orange with the glow of burning hotels, the lights in the House of Commons burned late, yet offered nothing but a deafening, paralyzing silence. It is a contrast that will define this government's legacy, the visceral heat of the Belfast streets versus the cold, bureaucratic inertia of Whitehall. At 9 p.m. last night, as the first police lines were being overrun, a damning encrypted memo leaked from the Home Office. It revealed a Northern command, overstretched and screaming for reserve units. The request was marked "political approval pending." That approval never came. It appears the government was more terrified of the optics of deploying troops than the reality of losing a city. Instead of decisive action, we received euphemisms. The Home Secretary, in a display of breathtaking denial, described the carnage as contained unrest. The opposition, sensing blood in the water, correctly labeled it collapse. But it was Prime Minister Keir Starmer's delayed National Stability Address at dawn that cemented the public's fury. For millions of Britons watching their screens, dawn didn't feel like a new day, it felt like an alibi. Reading from a sheet of paper, with the rhythmic delivery of a man prescribing political tranquilizers, the Prime Minister condemned the violence, but offered no substance. There was no mention of the mishandled asylum contracts, no acknowledgement of the economic despair driving the crowds. Senior advisors had reportedly warned him, "If we call it terrorism, we criminalize half the country. If we don't, we lose control of the rest." Paralyzed by this dilemma, Starmer chose the worst option. He said nothing of value. Behind closed doors, the intelligence failure is even more stark. MI5's regional desk had identified 52 encrypted online channels coordinating real-time crowd movements. They knew the drones were being jammed. They knew the cellular towers in Coleraine were targeted. An internal cabinet office line read simply, "Containment impossible. Public mood volatile." Yet, the order to act was strangled by red tape. By the time the Prime Minister left the podium, refusing to answer shouted questions about whether he would visit Belfast, the verdict was already trending. Britain on Fire hit 64 million impressions, eclipsing even the general election. The government has not just lost control of the streets, they have lost the consent of the governed. Public trust has plummeted to a record low of 22%. Westminster slept, and the nightmare is now at their door. The fires in Belfast are burning more than just brick and mortar. They are incinerating the United Kingdom's economic lifelines. While the media focuses on the spectacle of the flames, a far quieter, yet deadlier crisis is unfolding in the boardrooms and logistics hubs of the mainland. We are no longer dealing with a localized disturbance. We are facing a strategic hemorrhage that threatens to choke the national economy within days. The numbers are stark and immediate. By midnight last night, energy traders flagged critical anomalies as protesters attempted blockades of major oil depots in Belfast and Larne. The result was instantaneous. Fuel distribution across Northern Ireland dropped by 19%. Hospitals, already stretched, have been forced to switch to backup generators. A precarious lifeline in a modern G7 nation. But the contagion is spreading. Economists issued a grave warning at dawn. If this unrest bleeds into mainland ports, the vital logistics arteries to Liverpool and Glasgow could seize within 48 hours. The markets have reacted with predictable panic. In a single morning of trading, £1.2 billion was wiped from retail markets. Consumer confidence, already fragile, has taken an 8% nosedive. The message from the city is clear. Instability is bad for business, and right now, brand Britain is toxic. International observers are viewing this not as a protest, but as a collapse. In Brussels, diplomats are no longer speaking in diplomatic code. One EU official, speaking off the record, delivered a withering assessment. Britain used to export stability. Now it exports chaos. This loss of prestige is quantifiable. There has been a 46% surge in flight bookings from Belfast to Dublin. This is capital flight in its rawest form, citizens fleeing their own country for a weekend of peace in a neighboring state. The property damage alone stands at an estimated £91 million, but the reputational damage is incalculable. Foreign press are already labeling this the Starmer collapse. When the world watches a nuclear power unable to secure its own streets or protect its own infrastructure, the geopolitical sharks begin to circle. We are vulnerable, we are exposed, and we are bleeding money by the minute. The riots may stop, but the economic scars will take a generation to heal. As midnight returns to Belfast and rain begins to fall over the charred skeletons of the high street, the screaming has stopped. In its place is the hum of a city trying to breathe again. And here, in the cold light of the aftermath, we find the only glimmer of hope in this dark chapter. It did not come from a podium in Downing Street, nor from a police press release. It came from the people themselves. The state may have forgotten how to care, but the citizens have not. In the back streets of Belfast, scenes are unfolding that defy the binary narrative of hate. Strangers who stood on opposite sides of the barricades just hours ago are now passing blankets through broken windows. A young migrant woman, still trembling from the siege, was seen helping an elderly local man lift his fallen shop sign back into place. Scrawled upon it, a handwritten promise: home once, hope again. This is the Britain that Westminster ignores at its peril. At a small church near Donegal Square, the labels of Catholic, Protestant, immigrant, and local have been dissolved by necessity. Volunteers are lighting candles for the injured, each flame small, stubborn, and equal. The viral image of the day is not a burning building, but a message written on a soot-stained wall by a teacher named Aileen: "Forgiveness builds what fury burns." Within hours, her words were shared more than any riot clip, a digital testament that deep down, even in the roar of collapse, the public recognizes that strength is not control, it is compassion that survives the chaos. But let us be clear, this resilience is not an absolution for the government, it is an indictment of it. The people are fixing what the politicians broke. As we survey the damage, £91 million lost, 142 injured, and a reputation in tatters, we must ask the uncomfortable question. Is this merely a riot, a temporary spasm of violence to be swept away? Or is it a reckoning? Britain is a nation born of reconstruction, from rubble to roof, from war to welfare. But the contract has changed. The lesson written in the smoke of Belfast is that the patience of the British public is not infinite. The flames will die out, and the buildings will rise again, but the anger remains. If Westminster continues to offer silence instead of solutions, next time it won't just be the hotels that burn.
At their lines.
The question is no longer, what happens next? It is, who are we now? And for those watching in the comfort of their homes, do not look away. This story is not over. It has just begun.